Welcome to Heart Space Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Anna.
And I'm Candice. This is a podcast dedicated to all things heart-centered. In each episode, we will open our heart space to share embodied experiences, simple tips, and thoughtful prompts for you to live a heart-centered life.
If you are curious about the wisdom of our hearts, if you are ready to embrace deep transformation, this podcast is for you.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any episodes.
From our hearts to yours, Anna and Candice.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of Heart Space Podcast. And we are here with Candice, and we wanted to ask you, as usual, how is your heart today? If you have had the chance to fly on a plane, you must have heard, put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others. And the message here is very clear. We must first take care of ourselves before we can tend to other people, before we can help other people, before we can be there for other people. And this is true for so many things in life. So that's why today we wanted to talk about self-love and how to cultivate love for self. We'll also talk about self-care, what it really is. For some people, it may feel selfish or sound like an indulgence, but in reality, it's something way more profound, directly linked to love.
Yes, and I think there is many interpretations of self-love and varying degrees of self-love. So we are going to dive deep into what is self-love, what is self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-worth, self-care, self-soothe. It's all about the self. And the reason why we are doing all of this and saying all of this is because you can't find them in anyone else. It's just within yourself. You have to know, you have to experience it, and you have to tap into your inner resource to be able to offer yourself that unconditional love that we're going to share today with you. And we also want to bring up a point at this very beginning that there is actually a very broad spectrum in regards to self-love. There is one end of the spectrum where some people think that it's very selfish to have, indulgence of self-love. How can I offer that to myself if I'm not able to have enough time to carve out to do the things and do the routines and just be with myself for a moment. And then there is also the other end of the spectrum where in this wellness culture, in this modern wellness culture, it has become a buzzword or a trend. And people use self-love as a way to attain good health, freedom, or maybe even something a bit more superficial. Maybe it's like routines or using tools to make yourself look radiant and more beautiful. And I believe that a lot of this are actually because of how corporations, influencers are using the term self-love to commodify it into something that is sellable, that has, monetary value, and to put it up in the market that buy this product and you will receive self-love. But I think that is not self-love at all. That could actually be the opposite, and it's called self-sabotage, because we are so focused on self-isolation or self-attachment to this idea of this false ego, the false identity of self, wanting to do something for our ego or this superficial layer of self, rather than tapping into the deeper inquiry of what do I want? How can I offer love to myself? How can I just be? Yeah. So we just want to put it out across that it is also within both of our responsibility as, yoga teachers, as bodywork practitioners, therapists. We are kind of in this wellness industry, and to some extent, or to a really great extent, we are responsible for sharing the importance of true self-love. And what do we mean by self-love? And how can we identify between what is a marketing gimmick versus our conscious practice?
Yeah, so to me, self-love, well, at first it might be a little bit tricky thing to pin down, and it's such a vast topic, and it can mean something completely different for each and every one of us. And that's perfectly okay. And this is what it should be. And we can think of self-love as the act of connecting with ourselves. When I'm thinking about our modalities, about yoga and about Ayurveda, this is purely what they're trying to transmit through all of these teachings, connecting with ourselves and tuning into our truths. And when we practice self-love, when we are aligned with our truth of who we are, we can then offer ourselves self-love by being kinder, gentler to ourselves, without indulging in the inner critic, without judgment. So really with a lot of compassion, with a lot of self-acceptance, loving ourselves truly and unconditionally. And that's self-love, basically. So in the first episode of this podcast, we talked about heart-led intentions. And if you didn't hear this episode yet, go and tune in after this conversation, because we were talking there about exactly that, about our inner truth and what the heart really wants. And this is one of the ways to connecting with ourselves, just tapping into our heart-led intentions. And this is a pathway to step into heart-led living and just loving ourselves unconditionally. Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." So if we think about self-love, let's think about us as worthy, valuable human beings who deserve compassion, deserve to be seen, deserve to be heard, and from their self-love sparks.
Yeah, and if, like me, you're listening to Anna sharing that and nodding your heads, that probably means that innately your true self knows that you need to offer that the attention, the compassion, the care, the love to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's this book called The Art of Loving by author Erich Fromm. He wrote, love of others and love of ourselves are not alternatives. On the contrary, an attitude of love toward themselves will be found in all those who are capable of loving others. He says that self-love operates as a necessary condition for relating with our fellow humans. So if we can't even love ourselves, how are we able to operate, or rather connect with other people? And just, sharing a little bit more, going back into history, to put out the point that self-love is really not a trend. It has been said multiple times all across the globe, from varying cultures, about what self-love is, and it's a channel for connection. So in ancient Greece, Aristotle claimed that self-love, in its most virtuous form, serves as a model for how we should love our friends. And in the 13th century, Sufist poet Rumi wrote of the importance of recognizing the divine within ourselves to feel one with the greater universe. And the ancient Buddhist practice of metta, or loving kindness meditation, involves practitioners directing love inwards so that they can extend love outwards. It all starts with the self.
Yeah.
And finally, this very, very renowned Ayurvedic doctor, Dr. Robert Svoboda, he says in his book, the book is called Prakriti. I would highly, highly recommend you to read that if you are interested in Ayurveda. But anyway, this is a beautiful quote, and it's pretty long, but bear with me. He shares, "Our task on this imperfect planet is to work continuously towards relative perfection. The beginning of the word perfection is self-perfection. In the words of the song, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Self-perfection requires self-peace, which begins with elimination of your physical, mental, and emotional limitations. Understanding honesty, acceptance, forgiveness, and compassion are your tools for self-development. Nature is forgiveness incarnate, and all healing comes from nature. I think it's a very, very beautiful and moving sharing from him, because it touched upon a lot of attributes or values that we are about to share today: acceptance, forgiveness, compassion. They are all your tools for you to develop this intimacy with yourself. And if you realize that there is something bigger out there that you wish to connect with, be it the divine, be it the universe, be it nature, you would naturally be able to accept that immense amount of love and to also see it within yourself. Yeah, that there's this possibility that you can love yourself too.
Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful quote. And again, like we talked at the very beginning, sometimes we may feel that when we talk about self-love, it's about being self-absorbed or being arrogant or being selfish. But the truth is that self-love is not about elevating ourselves above anyone else, not at all. But it's rather about appreciating our own uniqueness, separate from others and separate from the opinion of other people. So I was on a talk and a meditation led by Ajahn Brahm, who is a monk and a teacher. And he shared there that none of us is better, none of us is worse, and we are not the same as others. We are just not the same. We are all unique. Each of us is unique. And that's also what Ayurveda teaches us. So how to develop love for yourself, or also why it can be sometimes difficult to practice self-love. You know, like I feel that it's easy to love ourselves when things are going our way, right? When we are doing good, when we are reaching the milestones and we are, you know, just being the best version of ourselves. Then it's really simple to love ourselves. But the question is, can we love ourselves when things don't go our way, or when we hurt another person, or we made a big mistake? And then the question is, do we still love ourselves, or our love becomes conditional?
Like we are suddenly stripped of this title of being lovable, and you just stop loving yourself because you're unworthy of love for all the faults and negative things that you have done. And
it may be difficult to be there for ourselves when we mess up. But for me, this is where deep self-love started to emerge and grow. When I was going through some difficult time, I was there for myself, and I admitted to myself that I am my friend, not my enemy. It means that you act the same way towards yourself that you would act towards a dear friend. Like you notice their suffering, you empathize, and you offer kindness and understanding, and you permit yourself to have flaws. Everyone has flaws. You don't punch your friend for having flaws. You don't punch yourself further for having flaws. So it's compassion that is the soil for self-love. It's when we love ourselves regardless of all of our mistakes, when we have compassion for ourselves regardless of all of these things. So the question is, can you have compassion for yourself when you do something wrong? So I feel that self-love is very much about applying compassion, and at least that's how it was a lot of times for me, applying compassion to all of those shameful places. Even if something else within ourselves is saying, you messed up, the invitation is to bring light to all of these shameful places and just apply compassion. It's like rising above all of these things and being the parent to our wounded inner child, and that's the development of deep self-love. Because it's not only about rewarding ourselves only when we are doing good. It's when we fuck up, when we break our own rules, that's when we need to love ourselves the most.
Yeah.
And this does not mean that we are not taking responsibility for our wrongdoings. We see it as it truly is, but at the same time, we develop immediate compassion for our missteps. And if this sounds weird and uncomfortable, take a moment and think, how would you love your child? Would your love depend on their performance and their behavior? Or would you love your child unconditionally? It's about valuing yourself as a human being who is worthy of love and respect. So self-love is when we treat ourselves like we would treat a person closest to our heart.
Yeah. And I feel like what you have mentioned earlier, something struck about having compassion for others. It's so easy to have compassion for your friends,
right?
Because it's your friend and it's all right to, have a little bit of flaws or things that you don't see eye to eye, but it's fine, it's cool. But with ourselves, we are so critical all the time. I just don't know why we are so uptight. Can we just listen and, give ourselves some grace? And by grace, that means compassion, the ability to just accept that. Can we offer kindness to ourselves and speak to ourselves with loving kindness?
Yeah.
So that is very important because compassion lays down the foundation, the soil, the earth, like you shared. And with compassion, then acceptance can slowly brew within this sphere of compassion and loving kindness. So I just want to share a story maybe about my personal journey into self-love. I think at different age, you would realize that, self-love means different things to you. And for me, one of the most pivotal moment when I truly experienced self-love, or maybe not even self-love yet, it's more like experiencing self-acceptance. That is when I was doing my yoga teacher training. I think it was 2 years ago already. During the training, every week when we meet, there will be a theme to the practice. And one day, the theme of the practice was the practice of death. Not like literal death, like dead, but not holding your breath in for 1 minute, but just the idea of letting something go in your life. It doesn't have to be something significant. It could just be a very pure intention of letting go of the expectation of your practice. So when I joined the yoga teacher training, I don't consider myself to be a very seasoned practitioner because I barely knew much asanas. I just joined the practice. I just joined the training because I knew this was something that I had to do in order to find myself, to find my voice. So the theme of death was slightly morbid, but I like morbid things. So I was riding along with it. And my teacher, Lee, was, prepping us with the idea of death and renewal after. And I was thinking about what do I wish to let go? And I couldn't think of much at that moment. And in the studio, there were those full-length mirrors that are placed right in front of you. So you could see everyone practicing. You could even see yourself practicing. Personally, I don't really have a liking towards practicing right in front of the mirror because it distracts me more than allowing me to come back to myself. So yeah, with the opportunity given with the mirror, I was criticizing myself a lot and scrutinizing that every single detail of my body, how I look, comparing myself with the rest. Why am I not strong enough in my practice? Why can't I just be confident enough to show up in a sports bra? So I also realized now in retrospect that I had a lot of issues with body image. I didn't think that I was one person who would have such intense hate towards my body, but I could come to terms now that I wasn't really nice to my body a lot. So all of these thoughts were magnified because of the reflection in my through the mirror. And I was just so tired about thinking about all these things. For a moment, I just tell my mind, can you just stop?
Can you shut up?
Yes, can you just shut up for a moment? Why are we doing this again in the yoga practice? I just want to do the practice and not think about anything else. So I closed my eyes. I stopped looking at the mirror. I stopped looking at other people. I just listened to my teacher's voice and flow through the practice. And when I close my eyes, I just tell myself, just for today, Candice, celebrate your body, celebrate her achievements. What can you celebrate about? I mean, everything you have said till now, to this point, is all negative things, right? What is the one thing, if there's nothing, what is one thing that you love about your body, that it gives you the ability to breathe? Isn't that enough? So I started from there. And then, when we are doing certain movements, moving through planes, like downward dog, and then you come up to mountain, you are moving your body, right? And you are also having a relationship with gravity. So the ability to even stand up, right, that requires a lot for your body to work through your muscles, your bones, and all of that. So I just had a very visceral impression and feedback. And I started realizing, wow, how much my body has, given me the ability to move and supporting me all the time when I have just been, saying the worst things to myself. But my body is still showing up for me anyway, no matter what. So this moment was filled with a lot of guilt, release as well, and finally followed by acceptance. And when acceptance came, it was pure stillness. It was just a moment of connection and reality that, I don't need to be so harsh on myself. So it felt like a little leaf that was on the branch, and the leaf withered and fell back to the stem, onto the ground, the soil of compassion. And it's, it will take time for a new leaf to grow again, but this renewal of something coming back up in future, I think that could only be possible because I finally accepted myself that, yes, I do not have nice words for myself at this moment, but I can also hold space for my body, and I am available and I am ready to build a better relationship with my body. Yeah. So that was a very long story of acceptance. And
but it's also very inspiring.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Thank you.
So maybe starting with one thing that we love ourselves, or for what do we love our body?
Yeah.
It can be the starting point for developing more acceptance and developing more compassion, ultimately developing self-love. Because each of us is on a completely different point on this journey, and just recognizing what is, your starting point.
Yeah.
What do you need right now?
Yeah, and we would also like to emphasize that this journey is not linear.
Yeah.
It comes back all the time, all these negative thoughts, right? But it's how we can then realize and have awareness that these thoughts are no longer part of my truth. And I now have the resources within me to know what is compassion, what is acceptance, and move through again. It will come back like the tides, the waves, hoping to drown you. Yeah. But can you stay afloat? Can you be easeful? Can you be fluid with your journey? And also be patient. I think that's also very important, to be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So just forget about self-love for a minute if that's too big of a topic. What is one thing that you can accept, like self-acceptance for yourself, before we even tap into, loving yourself, loving your body, those things?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And there might be some signs or some ways that we behave that are self-sabotaging. on our journey towards self-acceptance or self-love. And it's good to be aware what are some of your self-sabotaging behaviors. So again, very personal, depends on your own journey, but some of it can be, for example, from our observations. For example, depending on other people to make us happy. So when we lack self-love or self-acceptance, we may be constantly seeking validation, constantly seeking happiness from all of these external sources. And when we rely on others to fulfill our emotional needs, we won't be able to tap into our own self-love. There is constantly going to be this feeling of not being worthy enough and constantly feeling the need for approval and attention from others. And this creates dependence and it creates a problem.
Yeah, it's quite dangerous as well, right? Because we are relying on other people to determine how happy or fulfilled we can be.
Yeah.
And what if just so happened that the person exits from your life? Then what would happen to you? You are just so lost and empty then at that moment.
Yeah. So this happiness and worthiness comes from within. It sounds like a cliche, but it's so true. It can only come from within. As long as it's coming from the external sources and we depend our worthiness on that, it's never going to be stable. It's always going to be at risk of shattering.
Yeah, it's like a volcano that might erupt anytime, or an earthquake that would come.
Anything can happen to it. It's never safe.
Yes.
Your worthiness and your sense of worthiness is never safe. So that's why it cannot be dependent. You cannot be relying it on the external sources. Another thing that is also pretty common, I feel, is developing a victim mentality. When we perceive ourselves as a victim of circumstances, and I don't know, blaming some other people for our unhappiness. This is a lot about us not taking responsibility for our own lives. It's about putting our destiny in someone else's hands.
So it also sounds like a victim mentality can also be quite similar to what we shared earlier about depending on other people to make us happy. So it's either the person makes us happy or we
makes us miserable.
Yeah, and it's so extreme. There is no me in the picture. It's all about what others think about me, and hence I shall then reflect it onto my life, like onto the way that I think my life should be. Right?
Yeah.
And in yoga, it's all about removal of suffering. But if we are constantly building this narrative of victim mentality, or allowing other people to dictate whether we are happy or not, we are creating more suffering for ourselves instead of trying to remove this said suffering.
Yeah. And last but not least, mistaking inertia for rest. So it's when we don't really take care of ourselves. We don't provide enough sleep, enough nutritious food, enough exercise. So this lack of self-worth or lack of self-love or lack of self-acceptance can lead us to feeling like we lack enthusiasm to take care of ourselves properly, making it challenging for us to find the inner drive, to prioritize self-care and engage in things that contribute to our overall health.
It's important to rest, but we need to know when are we allowing quality rest as opposed to using rest or seemingly creating this idea that, oh, I'm resting, but actually I am not. I am, what's that word? I'm procrastinating.
Procrastinating is the word.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it's the difference between procrastinating and inertia that we mistake for rest and real rest, real self-care.
Yeah.
So you can think what is there present for you, whether you exhibit any kind of self-sabotaging behaviors. Maybe it's any of those that we discuss here with Candice, or maybe it's something else. But this is a nice also starting point to see where are you at, what is your situation right now, and what can you let go of in the theme of releasing what doesn't serve us, and how can you really honestly show up for yourself.
Yeah. And a very important point here is that it's a fine line, right? Everything is a fine line between how much are you taking a quality rest versus how much are you trying to delay the time before you come and meet yourself in front of the mirror and honor the truth and accept the truth. So it requires a lot of courage and responsibility and discipline. So we are telling you that self-love is not easy, but self-love is the only way if you want to live a fulfilling life, or if you want to live a heart-centered life.
Yeah,
you need to cultivate self-love and to practice self-care. And by saying practicing self-care, again, it's not like a very beautiful idea of going for a spa, doing facial, and just treating yourself to good stuff to feel good. It's good to have all of that, but beyond that, it's about taking responsibility for your health, for your wellness, and your life. We want to share a few self-care techniques here at this point, as well as to lay out what is self-care and what is this other new term that we're about to introduce called self-soothe. So there is a difference. Like self-care is pretty straightforward, and understanding like what is self-care, caring for yourself, and self-soothe is soothing yourself. So they are both very valuable tools, and we need self-care and self-soothing. Sometimes they might also overlap. It might feel like, oh, I am implementing self-care technique, but at the same time, I am also doing something that is self-soothing for the body. So the difference between self-care and self-soothe is that self-care has a more long-lasting personal progress, and it's usually something that is done to help you to, again, take ownership of your life, being responsible of your health, your well-being, all of that. Whereas for self-soothe, it can be a bit more in the moment needs, and sometimes it might also be slightly unhealthy or not too ideal, but it's very necessary for you to at least have a sense of comfort for yourself in the moment that you feel extremely depleted and you have no more resource within yourself to even think about self-care. So some examples of self-care could be staying hydrated, getting quality sleep, eating nutritious food, going to therapy, meditation, all of that, exercising, or even planning a budget for yourself. So knowing what is your boundary in terms of finances, that is also a self-care technique that you need to put into your life to ensure that you are taking ownership of your life. For self-soothing, you can do really ridiculous things and nobody would judge you, right? Like eating your favorite food, binge watching, or we talk about running along the alleys in a supermarket last episode. So doing things that are really fun, or it could also be just embracing your emotions, like crying, grieving, or deep breaths and moving your body, walking barefoot on grass, retail therapy. Like I said, it's very in the moment, wherever that you can reach out to at that moment in time. It could be going to your garden, it could be going to a shopping mall, it could just be being with yourself, lying down on the couch. All of that is part of your self-soothe techniques. So when you have your own time and space, you could also think about what is some things that you look out to for self-soothing, and what is some things that you would like to implement or have already implemented in your self-care routine.
Yeah, and when we talk about self-care, for me, it directly links to Ayurveda. And we talk here in this podcast a lot about Ayurveda, about yoga. And we wanted to share with you our approach to self-care through the lens of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is the knowledge of life, basically. And it sees our body as our temple. And it talks a lot about self-empowerment and the importance of our daily routine. In Ayurveda, self-care is a sacred act of self-love.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a practice of dinacharya, which is our daily self-care routine. It's a time where we can be with ourselves. We can devote it for cleansing, rejuvenating. So just some small daily rituals, actions. And in Ayurveda, that's through removing excess of ama or toxins from the body and bringing our whole system into balance, regulating our body clock and our digestion. And when we follow these routines daily, each morning, we are setting ourselves up for the day. And each day will begin with a similar routine that is good for us, and that we don't have to make the decision, what do I do today? And it doesn't mean that this is always every single day the same. As we talked before, life is not linear. Things change. We flow with our days, with our weeks, with our months. But it's about having this daily routine as a container to truly take care of our body in a very regular way. But we also talked about it before. What is crucial here, the crucial element to self-care, whatever is within your self-care, is self-discipline. It's about showing up, taking responsibility of our own mental and physical well-being.
Yeah, there's no fun stuff to share. It's all about the boring thing. Discipline is how you get there. Yeah. And also, I think it is the intention, right, behind doing the routine. If you're, again, like doing a set of routine because someone else tells you that this is what worked for them, and you are doing it just because you hope that you would be as radiant as how they look, then the intention is a little bit off here. When we talk about your body is your temple, we talk about a sacred act of love. It's a very deeply personal, devotional practice. And if you devote yourself to a practice, you wouldn't want to show up in a way that is very makeshift. It's only 50% of yourself showing up. Of course, there are days that is going to be a little bit less exciting for you to do the routines. But because of the discipline, it makes it easier to then step up and do it anyway, because you know that what you are looking for out of this is a very intentional connection with your health, with your mental, physical well-being.
Yeah. For me, one of the things within my morning routine or dinacharya that really provides me the opportunity to connect with myself and cultivate self-love is my morning yoga practice. It's not the only element but it's a thing that provides the most value at this moment in my life. Because as I mentioned earlier, through Ayurveda, we can learn so much about ourselves. Actually, through every single practice in our lives, we can learn so much about ourselves if we're willing. So then the first step is the willingness to know ourselves, the willingness to actually dive deeper and understand what serves us, what doesn't serve us, and having compassion for all of that. And then making decisions that are rooted in this self-knowing and self-compassion and not working against ourselves. And then we are ready to see our body, our mind as our closest friend. So this is how I feel during my morning practice. Through gentle movement, I can actually tap into my body through breath. I can connect with the flow of life within me. But then the ultimate practice is meditation. And as for meditation, it can be also challenging to develop regular routine of meditation for some. But the discipline, again, is easier when we actually understand the value that stands behind it and the pleasure that stands behind it. So through this practice, I can truly deeply connect with myself, and I feel like it's like an inner massage of my soul.
Yes.
It's like a massage to my soul. I just feel so full and complete, and I feel that I tended to my body, to my mind. And then the rest of the day is also fueled with the same self-love. And if we start the day this way, where we really made space for ourselves to be with ourselves, then it's easier to continue the same practice through the rest of the day. At least that's the experience that I had. Then the rest of the decisions for the day are coming from the place of love, through the food we eat, through the people that we surround ourselves with, the word we say to ourselves even. And it doesn't mean that from there everything is like perfect. But there is more capacity to be good to ourselves, to be loving for ourselves, if we schedule this kind of pockets devoted purely to ourselves.
It's all about filling up your cup first.
Yeah.
And then showing up for yourself. And like you shared, it's bringing the practice beyond the mat and allowing yourself to have all of that resources to be able to face any challenges, or also to accept and love yourself compassionately, as well as to celebrate the good things in life, right?
Yeah.
All of that. It's so important to have a very dynamic and rich experience on earth. My morning dinacharya has also evolved. Before sharing a little bit more about that, I think it's also very important to share that this is not us telling you that this is what you should do. If you are not familiar already, we have always been sharing that this is our experience and this is what works for us. And because we see the benefit of an Ayurvedic lifestyle, and it has worked for us very beautifully, and we are grateful for that. So that's why we are putting in Ayurveda into our sharing. And it is more important for you to be open to listen, and thank you for listening to us. But beyond that, to also determine for yourself whether this is something that you are willing to try and to experiment, and you will create your own embodied experience from there. Yeah, because what I'm about to share is also a very personal embodied experience of Abhyanga. And if you are not familiar with the Sanskrit word, Abhyanga means Ayurvedic oil massage. It involves a lot of oil and massaging of your body. And I like to also introduce another word that can be switched around between Abhyanga and this other word, and it's called sneha. So if we are doing a self-massage, it's more of a sneha action or routine rather than an Abhyanga, because sneha means, a direct translation of the Sanskrit word sneha means love as well as oil. So an act of applying oil in your body, on your body, is also an act of love, loving your body and connecting it through the sense of touch. So the feeling of sneha is a very gentle experience. It could also be something that asks you to be a bit more raw and intimate, but it's something that I feel that has bring me a lot of revelations and moments of connection with my body, and how disembodied I was before. And right now, when I'm doing a lot of sneha for myself, I can feel the change and the level of acceptance and openness and receptivity towards my body, and hence is a reflection towards myself amount of my capacity for self-love, and how then it will reflect with the life that I have and how I connect with other people. So in Astanga Hrdayam, which is one of the most relevant scripture in Ayurveda, it's the foundation of the Vedic text. It shares the benefits of daily Abhyanga. I'm not going to read out the Sanskrit verses, the scriptures, but just a very quick introduction about this explanation of why do we do daily Abhyanga, or why do we do daily Abhyanga or daily Sneha. The direct translation says that whoever does Abhyanga daily, aging is reduced, tiredness is reduced, dosha is reduced. It improves the clarity of vision and strengthens the eyes, gives energy and nourishes dhatus, which is tissues, and prolongs age, induces good sleep, and improves skin tone and complexion. So all of that benefits are a lot to do with the physical element of the body. And beyond that, I feel that it is also a lot about building this intimacy with yourself. And the root word of intimacy comes from this Latin word called intimare, which translates to inmost or make familiar. So breaking the word into pieces, you can explore even deeper meaning of into me, I see. And that is also something that in my yoga training, yoga teacher training, my teacher shared. Her interpretation of intimacy is into me, I see. So within me, I see myself, the sense of self, the seed of self, even clearer. And I feel that this is how we can be really vulnerable and be accepting that whatever that is showed up beyond the veil, beyond the mask that we have put on for a long while. When you remove your mask and let your walls down, you are able to just accept yourself for who you are. And from that, with that acceptance, with the intimacy, it can also give you a sense of freedom. It's the freedom that you experience when you finally find a way to liberate yourself from all the must do's, the should do's, the have to's, and supposed to, all of that. And if I may just share today, my experience with intimacy with myself was a very simple act of lying down on the ground and in Shavasana, just allowing myself to connect back with my body. Because personally, I have been on this health journey of irregular menstrual cycle, and it's a lot of, it takes a toll on me mentally, because not knowing when your menstrual cycle will come gives me the idea that it is disrupting my level of productivity, because I don't know when to rest or when can I plan for rest. But it also reflects that how rigid my mind is that why do I need to know when should I rest? Can't I just listen to my body to rest when I need to rest? Yeah, so long story short. So that with that irregularity, my period was delayed. And I have all the signs, the bodily signs of a period that is about to arrive, but it's just not coming, so that frustration and anxiety is building up, and it's gonna prolong this suffering even more within my body and in my mind, because it's so disembodied right now. So just laying down and placing my palms on my pelvis, my bony landmark above the pelvis, and I just tell my body, you can relax now. Just allowing this word to resonate with my body and my mind, to relax now. And I realized how much I've been holding up within this body just because I'm so uptight about when is this damn period gonna come. Yeah, so inviting my body to relax now, and after which supporting with another message or invitation or an assurance that I tell myself that I am not going anywhere. You can relax now. Because oftentimes, while I say that you can relax now, there is this condition that if you relax now, so how about giving me my period now that you are relaxed? But can I just be in this moment of just with my body and telling my body that there's no condition here. I am not going anywhere. I'm just being here with you. And it also allowed me to have that acceptance that it doesn't really matter when the period comes or not. Rather, how can I hold myself? How can I support myself? And with enough self-love, I could also then create better boundaries in terms of my job, in terms of my relationship, to then navigate through the bodily experience and to still partake in life very healthily and fruitfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are our experiences, but whatever self-care practice resonates with you, the goal behind stands the same. It's basically about connecting with ourselves, knowing ourselves, spending this intimate moment with ourselves, not working against ourselves, and seeing our body as and our minds also as our closest friend, just being there for ourselves, just like we would be for our closest friends. We would like to share with you 2 short prompts before we summarize this episode. What does intimacy mean to you? What does it really mean to you? Because it can mean something else to every one of us. And how can you choose to nourish yourself daily? Through self-care, through self-soothing. What is really nourishing for you personally? You can journal about that, you can meditate on that, whatever resonates with you the most. But it's always about those very personal experiences. There is no one size fits all. And as we sum up this whole self-love theme, that it's so wide, and it's actually very difficult to put it in one episode. We could be talking about it for hours. We just wanted to mention that we feel that it's important to love ourselves before we can love other people. As we cultivate self-love, or maybe at the beginning it's just compassion for ourselves, maybe it's just self-acceptance step by step. As we cultivate that within ourselves, our capacity increases, capacity to accept more emotions, capacity to flow with life, capacity to hold more love. It all increases. We can hold more love. We can make space for all of that, for all of the emotions that come. Just being this container that holds all of it and flows through life with acceptance. But the truth is that even though it's better to love ourselves before we love others, sometimes we actually see the possibility of love for others before we can even love ourselves, and that's also okay.
Yeah, or even receiving the love from other people to believe that love exists.
Yeah,
and then how we can use that as a way to open up, find a key and open up the door for you to seek within and love yourself the same or even more.
Yeah. A beautiful quote that we wanted to share by June Jordan, she's an American poet, says, "I must undertake to love myself and to respect myself as though my very life depends upon self-love and self-respect." So we're going to leave you with this quote. It's really beautiful, and it's so true.
Yeah, self-love isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, even more so in today's society. And again, we're not talking about self-love as a very superficial, luxurious experience in terms of going into a nice bar to drink a nice cocktail or going into a beautiful spa to have yourself done a half-day treatment. Those are great. But what we're talking about in terms of self-love, it's something deeper, that you can have the resources within yourself, and it should also be relatively not tied down to monetary value. And when we can allow ourselves to truly find that the sweet spot within, to love yourself regardless of how you react in the world, the emotions that come, the challenges that come, and to carry yourself and to also offer the same amount of compassion and acceptance, we start to also have this similar outlook in life, and also to care for this world, and our actions will then have this ripple effect on towards others.
Yeah. So the bottom line is be good to yourself.
Yes. Be nice to yourself. Say sweet things to yourself.
Yeah.
No need to be so uptight
And so harsh with ourselves. Treat yourself as your closest friend. So this is it for today. We love talking about self-love. We would love to hear your thoughts. So share your thoughts with us. You can write to us a message. You can also screenshot this podcast and tag us on your social media together with your reflections. We would love to hear them. We would love to hear from you. And last but not least, if you enjoy our podcast, share it with your friends and drop us a review.
From our hearts to yours.
Thank you for listening.